Hi, this is Bobby G, and this is Bobby G's Big Stone ATX. And my guest today is Scott Newton. Scott Newton is a local photographer who's captured pictures of all the greatest from ACL, going way back a long time. Scott, hello and welcome.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Thanks.
So tell us about the, I'm a big music fan, and I know so many people who listen are as well. And you've been taking pictures at ACL Live since how far back?
Well, first of all, when you say ACL Live, you have to understand there's two different things over there. There's the taping, Austin City Limits, the PBS TV show, and then there's ACL Live, a totally different production company that uses the essentially the place we built to do for their own private purposes. So ACL is the PBS thing that you can see on TV. ACL Live is a totally different thing. And also, I was their photographer for a while too, but I couldn't keep myself to 3 songs, and so they fired me. But I've got the other gig, which is the one that pays. So there you go.
So you're on the PBS one.
I'm the PBS one, correct.
Okay.
I don't anymore work ACL Live. It's okay. I mean, I'm not missing much. Well, I guess I am. But, you can't do all that. You just can't do it all. Yeah, I tried, and I tried it for a couple of years. Anyway.
Well, the tapings for PBS, there's what, about 10 to 12 a year?
20.
20 a year.
20. Oh, well, there's 20.
There's
20 tapings, yeah. And they're all typically a half an hour, or they could be an hour. So the finished shows are between 16 and 20.
Okay.
When they pare them down. There's an hour broadcast. Usually it's two shows per hour.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's indeterminate what the ratio is. Because of the really good ones, you give them an hour.
Yeah.
So, anyway, I went on, and my first season was season 5, 1979. I missed the first 4 years. At that time, I was the house photographer at the Austin Opera House, which was not being taped by, on TV, but was...
was that Willie's place?
Yes,
that right?
That was Willie's place, yes. I was the house photographer, and I had my darkroom in the building, and I had the perfect setup. And I did a good job with it for a while. But, boy, was that a good time. Anyway.
Any stories to relate?
Yeah, I got a lot of stories, but let's keep it on topic.
Okay.
Because otherwise it's just going to degenerate into wild times.
Fair enough.
And I'm not sure what I get out of telling everybody all my wild times.
Okay.
Other than boosting the mystique, which, that's all right. Doesn't need any help.
Good enough.
So anyway, I had my darkroom in the building, and and Willie Nelson was my boss, essentially. And so let's see, that opened up in 77. So anyway, Willie always will have just lots of people humming around him, busy. And he has a family, literal family, daughters, sons. Anyway, at the time, he had several people who were serving as his, helpers, essentially secretaries and hangers-outers and joint rollers and all the things that they did. And so I had a lot of friends among them, of course, being the house photographer at the Opera House. And I had my darkroom in the building. And one day, Jody Fisher, who was Willie's unofficial secretary, one of Lana's best friends, she said, Austin City Limits is hiring a new photographer. And I said, well, I don't know anybody over there. She goes, well, I do. And I'll never forget, she reached out. She didn't punch the numbers. She dialed the rotary phone. And Terry, and it was Terry's second year. So he was his first year as producer. Terry, I've got that photographer you're looking for. And she hands me the phone, and I made an appointment, and I went in the next day and showed Terry my stuff, and he looked at it all. What happened was, in the early days, they didn't have a travel budget. Austin City Limits didn't have a travel budget. So they watched the shows, and Terry worked with Tim O'Connor, who was running the Opera House. He was the operations manager, essentially. But anyway, so let's see, where did I leave that? So anyway, let me back up a bit. So she was Willie's secretary, and she knew everything was going on. So she calls Terry, and she says, I've got somebody you need to interview. So I went in, and I interviewed, and he essentially looked at everything I took, and he said, you've got everybody we've shot. Well, it was because we had. The reason they got to Austin City Limits was because the Opera House had paid for them to get there. And so he was riding Tim for the first year or two, just looked and saw whoever the Opera House was booking and called management and told them, okay, we've got the travel covered. You want to work for Willie? And of course, everybody wants to work for Willie. So that's how everything got going. So that's how I got that gig. I didn't know anybody other than I knew Jody Fisher, and she made the call right there in front of me. And so anyway, Terry, I'd already shot like Tom Waits. I already shot everybody they had that first year there. And I was totally prepared for that interview. In retrospect, I had everybody they wanted. I had Willie, I had Waylon, I had everything. I'd already shot everybody, and he just looks at me and he says, "Well, you already got better stuff than we've got, and you hadn't even shot any of our shows yet." so anyway, that's how I got the gig. So that was season 5, 1979. So I just never lost the gig. It's the first thing I ever did really for a living. First main photography gig I ever had. I learned the job by doing the job, and I had a little bit of talent for it, so it's managed to show up. Anyway, have you been down to San Marcos for my show?
No, I've not been down there.
Okay. Well, the Texas State is called the Whitliff Gallery, founded by Bill Whitliff, who was a screenwriter for Lonesome Dove and a bunch of other stuff. Anyway, he's dead now. Where was I going with that thought?
You've got a show down there?
I've got excuse me, sorry.
Is that coming up soon?
It's up. It's been up for it's a year. It's up for a year.
Oh, okay.
And it's already been up 6-7 months. Comes down in July.
Okay.
So
I need to make a ride to San
You
Marcos.
need to go see it. You do. I mean, if you want to see it.
I absolutely.
So it's because it's really presented well. It's in 2 big rooms, and they don't do anything half-ass. It's a nice gallery. They got a lot of things from Austin down there right now. But anyway, they've got my entire career because the things I do for City Limits are owned by City Limits, but I can show them and stuff. But the things I did before that, I own. So anyway, what I've been wanting to do all this time, I've had lots of Austin City Limits shows, but I wanted to combine my career from before Austin City Limits and after, because I worked for 10 years before 79, or almost 10 years. So anyway, so I'm trying to figure out where I'm going with this. Ask me some questions.
Well,
just get me going.
Yeah. So you we were talking earlier. Mm-hmm. Your dad was a fighter pilot.
Fighter pilot in the Air Force, retired after 26 years. He was a lifer, and he was a squadron commander when he retired. Yeah.
And before you came you traveled around the world.
Grew up all over the world, mainly Germany and a lot of the states.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then before you went to college, you graduated from high school in the Philippines.
In the Philippines, Clark Air Base, Wagner High School in the Philippines. Yeah.
And then you went to University of Oregon, is that right?
Washington. In UW in Seattle. That was my freshman year. And then my dad got transferred, but he retired, and he came back to the States, and he didn't retire yet. They gave him his last assignment, squadron commander at Perrin Field in Sherman, for squadron F-102s. So that was his sole squadron commandership that he did. By this time he was a lieutenant colonel. Anyway, so all that time he's doing Vietnam War, and I'm a high school kid. So when that all went, when he retired, he came back into Texas, and I had never lived in Texas. And I already spent a year as a freshman at the University of Washington, and he said, "Why don't you see if you take some of your scholarships and apply to some college in Texas and see if you can live in Texas?" I did. I looked around, and I found this small Catholic school. I didn't know anything about it, named the University of Dallas in Irving. Very conservative, it turned out. I didn't know any of that. I just went there because they would take some of my scholarships and stuff. Mm-hmm. So I got there, and I still hadn't taken any photography classes. At some point, I got interested in photography, and they had a small darkroom there at the University of Dallas. Well, I was an English major. I didn't get a degree from there, but later on I transferred from UT and got my English degree. So anyway, That first year in Dallas, the main thing I learned is you do not want to live in Dallas. It's just not a pleasant place to be if you're a kid, especially if your hair touches the top of your ears, which mine did, as you can imagine. So anyway, so I went to school there for, it turned out, sophomore and junior year. They had a good English department there, so all I had to do was read. And the one thing I did do when I was growing up was I read constantly. My dad would be transferred from place to place. First place I'd go is the base library and find out what they had at the library they hadn't read yet. As I was just a born reader, I could read 1,000 words a minute easy. It just jumped off the page right into my head. I was one of those kinds of learners. So as a result, didn't study much, had terrible study habits. I'm not bragging about it, but I just usually knew the stuff they were testing already. I'd already read it. I'd already read it somewhere. And I'm a constant reader, still am. Read the New York Times every day and the Post, and I just devour written material. Anyway, that's my background. So I get down to Austin, transfer for my senior year with some friends. We all moved into a house on 29th Street, and there were 5 of us. And I just jumped into Austin with the Armadillo. That was the way it began, and I just kept going.
Yeah, you were telling me the first day the Armadillo opened up.
Well, I don't know if it was the first day, but it was my first day here, and it was August of '70. So they might have played the Armadillo. It was a very loose thing. Okay, what it was a big building, unair conditioned, like I mentioned earlier, and it was a place for a bunch of hippies to go party, and we did. That was the beginning of the Austin music scene. That was everything that's happening now came from there, in my opinion. And I was here, and I was paying attention. So anyway.
And were you traveling around with your camera everywhere
I'm about to go into that. Somebody gave me a $25 or $30 to buy a graduation gift. So I went down to the base BX and I bought a little Petrie 2S. It was a parallax camera. You don't look through the lens, you look through the thing on the side. But anyway, it turns out it's a Japanese camera. Somebody once told me, it has a remarkably sharp lens. It turns out it did. So I took around that crappy little camera. It cost me $32, $35, something like that, and learned how to shoot film. First, I shot slides, put them in the mailers, and sent them off, and got them back. And after a while, I learned how to run black and white film.
Develop it yourself.
And developing myself. And so in my house, it had one bathroom, 29th Street, 5 hippies living in it. I learned how to set up a darkroom and run film in that bathroom. And so that's how I got started. Taught myself how to do that. And actually, if you know the truth, I haven't ever gone on to learn anything else besides photography. I taught myself that. Good enough, I'll take this. So I got a lot of good
Do you still develop your own film today?
No, of course not. No, I don't do film. It's all digital now.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah. So no, I stopped that. But yes, I still have my darkroom with the sink in it and the enlarger all set up. Now, if film ever comes back, I'm kidding. So anyway, starting then, it was film. I shot Tri-X from then until 2002. So that whole period was shot Tri-X from then until 2002. So that whole period was film, and mostly black and white, which I still have. I still have all that stuff. And it turns out it's a good thing I do, because that Tri-X, you shoot with good lenses. I've blown it up to 16 by 24 feet. You can.
Oh my God.
You're looking. Yes. You can make wall-size things off those things, and I've done it.
Is Tri-X the lens?
No, Tri-X is the film that Kodak put out, the black and white film.
Okay.
They had 2 mainline films. They had Plus X and Tri-X. Plus X was a 125 ASA, which they called, or ISO, film sensitivity, I used Tri-X, and it turned out it's just a marvelous film. So anyway, I learned all about that. I taught myself about that. So now I'm about to tell you about the first person who had an impact on me.
Yeah, tell me about
and,
that.
I was at a party, and I just started printing pictures in the little darkroom in my bathroom on 29th Street. I only was there for a while before I discovered this new place that was on Duval Street called The Dark Room. And you could go in and you could rent an enlarger by the hour, and you could run your own film. So I ran into there. Man, there's guys there that knew everything, and they taught me how to do everything. Taught me how to run film, how to make prints. And then there's one guy that would sell paper to the people who were printing. They charged them by the hour. And I said, well, how do you get to be that guy? And, it turned out that if you worked there, they didn't pay you with money, they paid you with paper. Okay. And let you run film. So that was a perfect gig for me. So I was in there I learned how to make prints and learned how to run film. And if I didn't know anything, I was talking to guys who were students at Brooks, who had graduated from Brooks and were there and hanging out.
And what was Brooks? Brooks
was the big photo school in California. Okay. You just look, Brooks Institute, I think it is. Anyway, it's not as famous as it was then. Maybe, and I just don't know. Anyway, so that's how I started. So one of the things that you do is, especially if you go into the Armadillo every night, you bring along your camera. Mm-hmm. And so I started shooting. Now here's the other half of the story. While I was going to school, I needed a year's worth of English credits to get an English degree. But when I got down here, they wanted you to take a foreign language. And the only foreign language I'd taken was Spanish, and I was horrible at it. I hated it. Everything else I loved. It came to me right away. I tested out everything, but foreign language, not so much. Well, the most pivotal thing anybody ever said to me was, you ought to look at taking ancient Greek. You don't have to write it. All you have to do is learn how to read it. And I went, really? So I did. I looked into taking ancient Greek, and I loved it. I just loved it. So before I was done, and I took intensive ancient Greek at UT for, one summer. I took a whole year's worth. And anyway, what I did was I discharged my obligation, my foreign language obligation, but what I really got was I got the knowledge of getting to understand how to read ancient Greek. So there I was reading Plato, Aristotle, reading all that stuff and devouring it. And I can't read ancient Greek anymore. I've lost that ability. But at the time I could. I translated the Odyssey. And, I actually progressed. But what I'm getting to is when you learn somebody else's language, you learn their belief system. You learn, what it is that they believe in by the words themselves. So anyway, I was picking up all kinds of things. You can't read Homer without, what are all these gods? What is this shit? How does this work? Anyway, so I took to the whole thing. I'm just kind of, how do I jump this and make it concise? So this is how it happened. So I'm studying ancient Greek, reading Homer, translating the Odyssey, looking at musicians through my camera. And while you're reading, especially Plato has Socrates talking about his muse constantly, about how he just defers to his muse whenever he has he needs to consult with the gods. He just goes inward. And the Greeks thought, and I actually believe it's true as well, that they didn't think that human beings were smart enough to be that creative, that creation came from a divine place. And those were the muses. And there were 9 of them, and they each had a different area of expertise or whatever. But some human beings could learn to communicate with them. And so this is where creativity came from. It didn't come from the people themselves. It came from their access to their muses. Well, so I'm reading this, and I'm looking at musicians. Oh, and by the way, what do you think a musician is? A musician is a person that can make the sound the muses make, or understands that language that the muses speak. So that's what a musician is. So here I am, and it's all about divine inspiration. It's all about that deep place, that creative place, and how you access it. According to Socrates, you can just get to where you can carry on conversationally, internally, if you develop a fine enough relationship. So as I'm shooting them, I'm finding I could see the muse. I could see when she was present. I could see when that person is being inspired. And I could shoot the picture and show it to other people. See what I'm talking about? They say, well, I can't see her, but I see what you're talking about. Yeah, that's an inspired photograph. That's what the whole thing is about. It's about inspiration, divine inspiration. So that divine part can be transferred to now. That's the one epiphany that I got from the Greeks. I took it to heart, and that's the one thing I learned. I got that well, museums is where we put the result of the muse. Music is the sound the muses make. I mean, it just goes on and on. You realize that this inspiration, this art, is coming from almost an external place, but also an internal place. And anyway, this was a mind blower for me.
Fascinating that you tapped into that.
I tapped into it.
And you ran with it?
I ran with it. I ran not only that, but people are giving me LSD. I'm doing all this together, forming my belief system, taking chunks from everywhere. Right about the time I discovered Lao Tzu and the Tao Te Ching, and I'm taking, the eclectic mix is forming. And I'm shooting music and understanding, the divine aspect of that, pulling all this in and starting to build my belief system. So the belief system is where your art comes from. So anyway, I
love that.
Well, this is true. This is where I came from. This is where I got my start. And I never went on to anything else.
Why would I want?
Well, I can write. I'm a pretty good writer too. I have those abilities. But what I found was that all the things I couldn't draw with my hand, I could see and render. I could take pictures of it. I could, I could express myself visually. I could see all the forms that were out there, and I could isolate out and take them out and focus in on the things that inspired me. And I was gifted with that, ability early on, and I didn't take any photography classes. But what happened next was interesting. So by this time, I've had enough. This is going on. I'm printing some of the pictures of the musicians, printing other things too. We'd go to West Caves and, shoot nature shit, always in black and white almost. Well, sometimes I'd send off slide mailers. But anyway, I get way off and then I lose track of where I was. Okay, so by this time I'd set up a crude enlarger in the bathroom along with trays, and I got into the whole, magic of watching prints come out of the developer. I mean, you're watching a safe light in a dingy yellowish room, and you're looking in the tray, and this sheet of paper that you've exposed, correctly, all of a sudden starts rendering an image right in front of you, and that's magic too, So all this magic going on in my life. The music itself, it was in the air. It was The Greening of America was the title of the books. But it was true. We were all in this together. All of us kids were. They call us boomers now, but we were just a bunch of hippies.
Who are some of the artists that really you feel like you connected with?
Well, that's a good one. That's a good question. Because they were all right there. You could go see them. And they were all our age. They were friends of ours, it turned out. And we all got absorbed in the thing. Even though I couldn't play music, I did have a skill, which the musicians liked, which was neat for me, got me into that whole scene, a valued member kind of thing, accepted as an equal, just from taking pictures. But the bottom line, it was mainly a musical scene, and what the words to the music, the poems to the music, all this was all forming together. It was all churning and boiling and roiling, and this is going on. This was a very exciting place to be in the early 70s. 70, 71, 72, 73. It was amazing. All this time I'm teaching myself photography in my bathroom with my little crappy camera. I've still got all those negatives. I can show them to you.
I'd love to see them.
Well, it can be done. A lot of people have sat in my office and gone through those notebooks and gotten inspired. So anyway, so it's about this point, and I brought you up to about where I was and how I was working and what I was absorbing and what I was learning and what I was, as we used to say, grokking, just coming aware of. And it was all just churning away. Well, into this scene, I went to a party, and I had, a stack of probably 30, 40 pictures. Maybe I had them in a briefcase. Maybe I had them in a box. Maybe I carried them separately. I don't know. But I left them at this party, and I went somewhere. And while I was gone, a guy named Marlon Taylor came by and picked him up, looked at him and said, "Whose are these?" Well, it turns out that Marlon I think he was the first graduate of UT photojournalism program, good friends with Frank Armstrong, who was the UT photographer, who is still alive, J.B. Colson, who was the head of the department over there. And anyway, so Marlon he became friends with me, and he told J.B. about me. And at the time, they were looking for somebody outside the department. And it turned I was the perfect person because I wasn't from anywhere. Wasn't bringing any agenda. I was totally self-taught, and that was what they thought they wanted. Well, anyway, they hired me and made me the head lab instructor and the only staff person in photojournalism. As that person, you had to do everything. You had to maintain and check out the equipment. You had to sit in for the professors if they, couldn't make the gig. Anyway, there was lots of stuff that that person did, and head lab instructor. I had to learn the zone system, and anyway, that's where I got my education. I didn't get it from sitting in a classroom learning about how I learned by having to teach the students, having to teach other students who were just a year or two younger than me. Most of them. I was fresh. It was a fresh English degree that I had. Anyway, so Marlon Taylor got that stack of prints. And he saw that I had, as he put it, he said, you don't need to go to school. You got the eye, man. That's what they all used to say. You got the eye. And everybody knew what that meant. What that meant was you're a born natural. You see it.
You tapped into
You tapped it in. Yes, exactly right. So, and that was, Marlon Taylor was that first person. Now, Marlon just happened to have died this year. And he was a very prolific shooter. He was an inline shooter for Joskies, for a bunch of. He did a lot of fashion, but he was a good friend of mine, and he introduced me to a lot of people that became good friends of mine. I introduced him. Some of my friends became good friends of his. The girl that I moved there, Sandy Mobley, became a good friend of his. Anyway, all that being said, that's how I got grounded. That's how I got in my start in photography. Ask me a few questions about it, and we can proceed down the line, and I'll tell you how I got the rest of the gigs. So,
well, I'd love if we can take a step back and you can
Sure.
talk about some of those musicians and some of the people
we can
you
do that.
just really connected with, and
well, okay.
Doug Somm,
This
for
town,
instance.
I knew Doug. I knew all those guys. I knew Rocky. Rocky had just gotten out of Rusk. Rocky Erickson. Do you know who that is?
No, I don't.
13th floor elevators. You ever heard of him?
Oh, sure.
That's Rocky Erickson.
Yeah.
Rocky Erickson is he's the couldn't call him the psychedelic grandfather, but you could. Yeah, well, he was young then. We were all the same age. But Rocky had been to Rusk, and Rusk was a mental institution. And one of the times that Rocky was doing, first of all, Rocky was a very different person, unlike anybody I've ever met.
How so?
He was, well, you'd call him schizophrenic, but it's way beyond that. Rocky could tap into what you were thinking. He knew what your dreams were. He would tell them to you. He was a very different person, and he had a huge following of people. First of all, he had an incredible rock and roll singing voice, and he was also on the edge of schizophrenia, if not over. But anyway, at one point, he was doing acid, and he was in a tree, and he got arrested. And he ended up before a judge who said either you go to Vietnam, enlist and go to Vietnam, or you go to a mental institution in Rusk. What do you want? And Rocky thinking mental institution in Rusk would be a walk in the park. Well, it turned out it wasn't. They got him there. They did a bunch of what do you call it when you hook up electrodes to somebody's electric shock.
Therapy.
They did electric shock therapy on him, seriously.
Oh, man.
And they curdled his brain. Now, Rocky still had his genius. He was a genius songwriter and singer. An incredible voice. To this day, I could play you a song, you go, God, that's him? Yeah, that's him. So anyway, he had a huge following. Before he went into Rusk, and when he came out, he was this thing that they boiled down to, what is it? All the time, he's singing and playing. In he has a band in Rusk.
So is that when he becomes 13th floor elevators?
He was 13th.
Rusk?
He was 13th floor elevators before he went into Rusk.
Okay.
That's what he was before they put him before they put him in the mental institution. Now he got out in I think '74, because that's the first time I ever shot him. A good friend of mine, her name was Peggy Underwood, was a good friend of his, not a good friend of his, but a great friend of Towns Van Zant's. And they all in Towns and Rocky and all them lived in Clarksville. So that was the little, half of Clarksville is gone now. When they put in the Mopac, they bulldozed half of it, but still it's still there.
So you shot Towns as well?
Yeah, yeah, I shot Towns early on. But the best things that I did, I was with Peggy. Let's go to this party. Where? Party over at Clarksville, in Unks. Uncle Seymour was an old black slave, freed slave. Yeah, he was.
Really?
Yes, Uncle Seymour. He was in his 80s, and the hippies loved Uncle Seymour. Unc, they called him. Yeah, Seymour Washington. Do your research. People, you can find something. He was an old. He was a what do you call it? Farrier. He took care of horses for the people in West Austin, which it's always been. That's where the rich people lived. So he was the best farrier of the ex-slaves. Anyway, he was a font of knowledge. He was definitely one of Townes Van Zant's best friends, if not his best friend. He was just.
Was that the guy? He was over his house.
Yes.
When he got shot.
No, you're mixing up. You're mixing up Blaze Foley. Blaze Foley. Anyway. Blaze Foley's son.
That's right.
You're mixing up. You're mixing up people, conflating. Yeah, I can see why you would, but no, they're different stories. So anyway, Blaze was a whole other thing. That's West Marion, South Austin. Now they're separated by 10, 15 years. Those two incidents. Okay. I was there for all of it, and I wasn't there when Blaze shot. Let's see, how did that work? Anyway, he was the guy. Okay, he hung out with this older guy, black guy, and Blaze did. Now we switched from Townes to Blaze, and he hated the older guy's son, who was just evidently a bully. And
flipping him off or something.
Yeah, doing all that. But he wasn't treating him with respect like you should. But anyway, Blaze got pissed about it, and somehow I'm trying to think of who got shot. Somebody was shot and killed out of that whole thing. I'm talking out of line now. I'm trying to remember. It's been so long. When I fell off that ladder, I pulled my hamstring on the left side, so I'm kind of wincing here. So anyway, no, let's get back to the story.
Yeah, so you went to a party in Clarksville.
Went to a party. No, but that's not where he saw I'm trying to remember where he could have been. He saw a stack of prints. Well, okay. No, there's lots of parties. That was mixing up parties. Okay?
That was earlier, but you said you went over to. You were invited to a party in Clarksville.
In Clarksville, right. Peggy brought me over, and it was mainly the people that were there were Rocky and Dana, his wife, and a whole bunch of people. Townes was one of them. They were playing craps. Townes loved to play craps. And anyway, but it was a separate time. But around that time, Marlon Taylor saw my prints, decided I was a good photographer, and he tried to get me, and he did. He got me the gig at UT. He introduced me to the guy who would hire me for it. So for a year and a half, I got my real education being the staff guy in photojournalism, not taking classes, but supporting the professors and being the head lab instructor and all that.
Nice.
So anyway, that's how I got started.
And then how did you transition from there over to the Armadillo?
Well, okay, the Armadillo was I just showed up with a camera. You could
was that about the same time?
No, Armadillo was earlier.
Armadillo was earlier.
Armadillo was 1970. But at the time, and I just learned enough, taught myself enough to be coherent, speaking to somebody who actually had a photographic education. So I prepared myself and done just enough work to realize, that to have some training. And anyway, that's where I got that. Now, in 73, I guess it was, I got hired at UT. So in between, say 71, I didn't even know I was a photographer. Okay, I'll give you this really happened. I had a friend named Billy Callery. He was a musician, and he wrote a song called Hands on the Wheel that Willie made famous. Anyway, Billy was like my older brother in the sense that he introduced me to all musicians. Took me to Jerry Jeffs, took me to all these places where they're all sitting around picking, and he'd take me along. I had my camera, I'd take pictures. I was accepted as part of that deal. It was all organic. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just there, and I had a camera, and I wasn't afraid to use it. So that's how that unfolded. So there was a bar called 1973, in early 73, my girlfriend, Mary, who would later become my wife and the mother of my 3 sons, we were hippies together. And anyway, so we decided to take a trip for various reasons I won't go into, to San Francisco. So we go to San Francisco, and we
And,
both have
and what year is
in
this?
73,
73.
early 73. So I had a Volkswagen van. She had a Volkswagen van. Let's see, which one of it do we take? Was it hers? No, it was mine. We took my Volkswagen van. It threw a rod. No, it had difficulties. The engine broke down in Fort Stockton. So we had to hitchhike back and pull the engine out of her Volkswagen van and crate it up put it up. And a friend of ours put it in her van, drove us back to. By this time, the car had been towed to Odessa, and so we slapped it in. I'll never forget, under a shade tree. I slapped in that Volkswagen engine, and we got it to run. Now the electrical systems were different, but I could fix that. So anyway, we drove on out to San Francisco, and then it developed a rod knock, and so we were in San Francisco, and Mary's sister lived actually on Haight Ashbury. And but we were only there like 3 weeks, and then sister and brother-in-law moved to Potrero Hill to this house they rented. And so for the rest of that summer, Mary and I sat and watched the Watergate hearings on TV in a house without any furniture down on Potrero Hill. You could look out and see all of San Francisco. It was the most beautiful place. Anyway, so we're just waiting for the engine to get shipped to us so we can slap that in and drive back to Austin. Well, it took a long time to get there. In the meantime, I spent a whole summer in San Francisco. It was wonderful. So this is the summer of 73. By August, the engine finally arrived. I got it put in, and then I could talk about lots of stuff that happened, including push starting the car. Turned out we didn't have any brakes. Anyway, we almost went over the hill. So I'll stop there. It was about that. That whole summer, I went and saw the Grateful Dead at Kezar Stadium, saw Waylon Jennings there, the opening act. Anyway, first time I'd seen Waylon, I think. I know I might have seen him at the Armadillo before that. Anyway, saw Little Feat. Okay, now here's the key. The key is that before I went, we became good friends, mainly through Mary. Mary is just the most personable person, still is. She can sell iced Eskimos. She just, everybody wants to be around Mary. Anyway, she was my social secretary. I'm not that extroverted until I get to know people. Mary's extroverted to everybody. Anyway, through her really and us, we were the couple, Scott and Mary, and we became core members of this group that mainly was around, not the Armadillo anymore, because when we came back from California, I took Mary by to the Armadillo and just thought I'd breeze right in and again walk in, no cover charge, of course, because I was a photographer and they let photographers shoot for free because you had to pay for it yourself, and So anyway, all that going down. I'm just trying to think now.
74.
74. But I'm going to make this bridge. No, Castle Creek is where I'm trying to get to. Castle Creek was a bar. It's at 15th and Lavaca. It's still there. They park cars in it. They took the roof off, but if you go by there, they won't tear it down because it's been grandfathered in. It's one of the oldest buildings in town. So anyway, it's right across the alley from the Chili Parlor. Okay. So I'll never forget being in Castle Creek one day, and somebody said, they just opened a bar next door. Really? Next door? Yeah, right across the alley. It's called the Chili Parlor. Well, really? Let's go. So anyway, it's still my favorite bar. After every Yosel Cinema show, I still go to the Chili Parlor. That's my pilgrimage after every show. Almost every show. Anyway, so the Chili Parlor had two owners. One of them was Tim O'Connor, who later became Willie Nelson's right-hand guy. Opened up the Opera House, opened up the backstage, the one out in
The backyard?
Yeah, the backyard. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he opened the backyard and the Austin Music Hall. Tim did all that. But when I got to know him was Willie won the Opera House in a card game. And he needed somebody.
That's how he won the Opera House?
That's how he got in the Opera House. He won it in a card game. And he turned to, who did he turn to? He turned to Tim to run it, because Tim and Doug Moyes, they ran Castle Creek and they made it into the best listening club in town. But at some point, Doug Moyes moved back to Colorado, and Tim became Willie's main roadie, before Pootie. And Well, Pootie was there too. Anyway, it was kind of an amorphous thing. Willie's family has always has been. Anyway, all that being said, that's how. So when that's how the Opera House got going. It was the Texas Opera House, and then it went bust, and then it fell into Willie's hands, and it became the Austin Opera House and Opry House, and then it became the Austin Opera House. Anyway, when he first got it, it was the old Oak Terrace Motor Hotel and Convention Center. It was the first destination that Austin had for any kind of social thing south of the river. It's still there. You can go see it off Academy. He asked. Tim had the idea. See, the Armadillo had a warren of poster artists: Jim Franklin, Danny Garrett, Michael Priest, on and on and on. Ken Featherston. Tim wanted the same thing. So he approached me. He said, I want you to move your darkroom in there. That's music to my ears. I'm just really starting out in the business. Yeah. Never really had anyway, so I had built a darkroom in my old house on 1325. Anyway, but I don't want to digress that far. But I built a darkroom already. I still have the sink. Anyway, fiberglass over plywood is really all it is. I'm trying to think how to tie this back. So anyway, I end up, Tim, he wanted to, so I agreed. I agreed to be his first one. I'd be the photographer. I'd put my darkroom there. Well, nobody else ever came and set up like they had at the Armadillo. Danny Garrett didn't come. Danny Garrett did all the posters, but a lot of guys did the posters for the Armadillo. But anyway, I'm the only one that came over. And so I had my darkroom in the building, and I wished I'd realized exactly what I had when I had it, because I worked it hard, but I would have worked it harder, because they booked everybody. They booked all these people. I shot Bonnie Raitt, probably 3 times in '77 alone. It's like, anyway, and I've got all those negatives too. All that being said, that was where I got started, and then the famous Jody Fisher picking up the phone and saying, "Terry, I got somebody you need to talk to," and that's how I just joined it all together. So then I show up. 1979, hired as an assistant to the guy who'd been the photographer the year before, named David Eberhard. That was David's last year, because they didn't use his shit after that. So anyway, that's how I got going. I cut through a bunch of stuff there, but got you to 1977, at least 79, when I got the Austin City Limits gig.
And now this was in the communications building at UT, right?
Yes.
That was the original?
Well, there were 2 communications buildings. The original one, before they built the photography school, the one that's there now. Okay. But it was in the same CMA. It was in CMA, and anyway. But I'd already left. I had been there and helped. I was just, okay. When I went to work there in '73 as photojournalism, the photojournalism department was in the basement of the geography building. Okay. And so they for the next year and a half, they transferred all the equipment and everything over to the brand spanking new photography labs over at where they have them now, the CMA complex, the communications complex. So anyway, that's how all that got going. I didn't come on Shooting City Limits until 5. I missed the first 4 years, although I did go to a lot of the shows. The only black and white negatives of the Kinky Friedman show that exists were things I shot from the audience. Right? Yeah. So anyway, I got ensconced in that gig, and it was the best gig in town, really. And they didn't pay that much, but I had access, and not only did I have access, I had great access. And that's one thing that hasn't stopped in the 50 years that I've been doing, 51. Well, 51 is the show, minus 4. So this is my 47th year. Wow. And I'm still doing it. Hopefully I can do it a little while longer. I've already gone through a triple bypass, colon resect, 2 total knee replacements. On and on and on. I'm swapping out parts. So, cataracts last year too. On and on. Oh, so man. as long as I keep swapping out the parts, I'll keep doing the gig.
Like the Timex watch, right?
I'm sorry?
Like the Timex watch. It
takes a licking and it keeps on ticking. Yeah, that's me. I have good endurance. My mother just died at 100 this year in January. Oh, yeah, that's really sad. But she wanted to go. She'd reached her limit. She'd reached her expiration date.
My pop passed away a couple months ago.
Okay, well, we're in the same boat. Her birthday was January 2nd, and she died 14 days after that, after her 100th birthday. She had the party she wanted. She was the oldest of 12. She still has some existing brothers and sisters that made it to the, and then all of her friends. And she had 3 sons and a daughter. And the good thing she had that daughter, because that daughter really, really worked hard when she was needing the help later on. So anyway, she lived at home until a week before she died.
Nice.
And then she went into hospice or whatever. Yeah. I was there. So anyway, my dad died 13 years ago. 13 years ago. And he was her age. They were both, anyway, he was 88.
Yeah,
so he made a good one. Life. He was a fighter pilot right up to the end. He was that guy. And I got a lot of my temperament from him. So I know where it came from. I know where I got it.
You said the Great Santini, right?
Yeah, pretty close. Yeah, he wasn't that mean. He was mean, but not that mean.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
When you told me that earlier, I was like, oh, I hope not that mean.
Well, he was pretty mean. What happened, he used to hit me a lot, but the last time he hit me up the side of the head, and he pulled all the muscle. He was still in the Air Force. He pulled all the muscles on the inside of his right arm. It almost made it so he couldn't fly. In fact, if he'd gone to the flight surgeon, he wouldn't have let him. But anyway. So, he was that. My dad was, he was not a nice guy on those levels. Later on, after he retired, he turned a new leaf. But he was tough when we were growing up.
Well, I bet you've got to be tough.
He was.
To be a fighter pilot.
He was a fighter pilot. And all I ever heard from all of his compatriots was, your dad is the best fucking fighter pilot in the whole fucking Air Force. Did you know that? I would hear that every time they'd all drink together. They'd all pull me aside. In fact, it just happened again. There's still Colonel Knobloch was at his funeral and was telling me all the old stories. Anyway, my daddy was something. I mean, I admire him now, but he was not fun to be your father. He was not that guy. But I respect him, now. But I didn't when we were growing up much.
Yeah.
So, I feared him more than anything. He wasn't afraid to hit. Mm-hmm. But that's how he grew up.
Well, it's a different time.
It was a different time, and I'm not whining about it. That's just what it was.
Yeah.
It was a good place to start. He was real smart. And my mom was the sweetest woman in the world, so just barely gone. I feel like she's here still. So anyway, ask me things about photography.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about some of the musicians that you shot and some.
Oh, you want to do that?
the memorable. Some of the memorable evenings that you had at the.
Well, that's so hard to pick out. You just have, once I get if you want to know that, best thing to do would be to come by my house and let me go through the negatives, the books, because all it takes is looking at a contact sheet, and I got a million stories. It's all right there. So.
Well, I saw on your website the picture of. The Grateful Dead did a Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
That
famous Thanksgiving at the Armadillo. It wasn't the whole Grateful Dead. It was just Jerry and Phil Lesh, I think, came.
Okay.
And but anyway, it was that famous Thanksgiving where Doug saw him. They'd played the night before. Doug said, "Come on over to the Armadillo. We'll do Thanksgiving together." And they did. They came and everybody that was listening to what was our radio station, KRMH, I think was the radio station. Anyway, they announced, and 1,000 hippies showed up to celebrate. Thanksgiving, and I was one of them. And I took my camera, and I still have the pictures. But that's the only time I ever got a good close-up shot of Jerry Garcia. That's funny, because I always thought, shit him again someday. I would have, but anyway.
And you said you shot Bonnie Raitt about 3 times.
More than that, really. I mean, Bonnie and I are we're the same age. Okay. So I've been shooting Bonnie Raitt her whole career, because she'd always come through Austin, and I'd never miss her. She's something else to this day.
Yeah, she really is
So anyway, so musicians. When I first got here, that's interesting. Rocky Erickson was, when I first got here, he was still at Rusk, so he was a legend already. But at the Armadillo, which was everything, it was the high church. It was like what's the cathedral in Salt Lake City for the Mormons. It was about that same kind of thing.
The tabernacle.
It was the tabernacle. Yeah, that's the word, exactly the word I was looking for. It was the tabernacle for all the Austin hippies, and it was the temple really. And I danced.
Was there a house band that played?
Yeah,
there
that's
all
where I
the
was
time?
going with that. There was and there wasn't. Shiva's head band was mainly the main house band, but there were others. Hub City Movers. Think of who else? Commander Cody. Greasy Wheels was the house band, and Sweet Mary Egan.
Which isn't Greasy Wheels supposedly like the Texas Grateful Dead?
Yeah, they kind of were. Well, they weren't. What they had was they had a pretty good band. They had Cleve Hattersley who was the band leader, and Cleve's he's not for everybody, but he's a good front man. He got sent off to, as they called it, Argentina, which meant he got busted and had to go to jail for several years. Most of them did. Most of the people in those days went to Argentina. Luckily, I never. That was the one thing I didn't do.
So they literally went to Argentina, or they went to jail?
That was the euphemism for going to jail. Yeah. Where's Doug? He went to Argentina, and everybody knows. Oh, okay. When did that happen? And then
And this is just for like having pot or something.
Yeah, pot. It was pot. It was always pot. This was before cocaine even anybody even heard of it. It was all about pot. So at least the early days. And then I'll never forget. Somebody knocked on my door at 29th Street. Is that a cop? There's a cop right there. Right there. He's here right there. He's about to come knock on your door. At least the security guy. Okay, you don't care. Where are we?
Oh, various musicians that you.
Oh, right. Hub
just
City
connected
Movers,
with.
Greasy Wheels. Sweet Mary was the star. She's still around. Her husband at the time died, and she eventually married Cleve Hattersley, and so now she's Mary Hattersley. Hattersley rarely performs, but at the time she was everybody's idol, and just the sweetest girl and a great fiddle player. Anyway, it was a very small scene. There wasn't a lot going on. There was the Armadillo and a few other bars. Not a lot. Now the audience was there for sure, and Alliance Wagon Yard. I'm trying to think of other places but there were just a few bars up in there.
How did things change? That's the 70s.
Yeah.
Then how did things transition in the 80s?
Well, there's a lot of time between the mid 70s and 80 because the blues happened. Antone's opened. Clifford happened. At the time, I think the.
When did Antone's open? Was that 77?
I'm not really sure.
It was 80.
It was in the 70s. It was mid to late 70s. He had, I think, a place on 6th Street, and then he had one. He had so many different Antones.
So you must have got a chance to shoot a whole lot of blues.
I didn't shoot much at Antone's. If you had a good gig,
You had to pick your spots.
You had to pick your spot. And my spot was the Opera House. By that time, I had my darkroom in there, and I had a whole world set up. I could come and go as I pleased.
But there weren't any blues guys coming over to the Opera House?
There were some. Tom Waits played there, but I'm thinking of blues guys. I'd have to go back and look at who played. The Opera House, you've got the Texas Opera House, that's pre-Willie, pre-Tim. And then 77, they transitioned. They put seating in, and they got the air conditioning working at the Opera House. So what they had over the Armadillo was they were air conditioned. The Opera House was, and Armadillo was not. It was we all danced soaked with sweat. So the Opera House comes on in 77, and 77, 78, 79. Those are golden age. That's the golden age. It was the glory days. That's when Austin's scene was just getting going. Rusty Weir, people like that Rusty was here. He grew up here.
So that's the Cosmic Cowboy kind of.
Michael Murphy was a real. This is a good story. Michael Murphy was. He lived up on North Lamar in an old motel. What do you call it? Motel courtyard thing. All the cabins lined up and everything. So he rented the main house, and he rented out. I don't know how he got a hold of it, but he rented all the former hotel rooms to his buddies, and so that was called. They called themselves public domain. Anyway, that's where he wrote "Home with the Armadillo" and all that. That's Gary, and Gary was he got here by being Mike. He was in Mike. Bob Livingston and Gary Nunn got here by being in Michael Murphy's band, and I saw them do. I was at the Armadillo when they paraded out the Cosmic Cowboy song. I mean, they came in and nobody had heard of that song. By the time they left, everybody was singing, I just want to be a Cosmic Cowboy. And Gary knew he'd fucked up. Because, well, not Gary. Michael Murphy did not want to be known as the lead Cosmic Cowboy. He took himself much more seriously than that. He saw himself, he had pretensions of being a top of the line. So he did Wildfire. He had some #1 hits. Anyway, he did not want to be known for that. So Michael Murphy got out of town. He made a conscious choice that he wanted to go off to Colorado or wherever and do Western revival shows and shit. I mean, it was like, and he had the voice and he had the songs, but he did not want to, so he got out of Austin.
But he lit that fire.
The fire was being, B.W. Stevenson had My Maria, the first #1 hit out of Austin, was B.W. Stevenson. My memory is telling me that. And
but that's who had the first ACL show, right?
yes, but it never was shown.
Okay.
Because they didn't they didn't understand you have to advertise if you want people to come. So they didn't do that. And when they didn't do that, that song was, that act had to be redone. And so they sat around and thought about it. Well, let's ask Willie. I bet they'll come for him. Well, sure enough, that's what happened. So that's how that unfolded. Uh-huh. So anyway, the Texas Opera House.
Back to the Cosmic Cowboys, though, which was mid to late 70s.
Cosmic Cowboy that was early. That was early to mid 70s. Cosmic Cowboy, they first did it at the Armadillo. My guess is 73 is when I saw it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they did that. And then anyway, so Michael Murphy left town and he left his band here. Gary Nunn and Bob Livingston and John Inman, and I mean, a really good kick-ass band that called themselves the Lost Gonzo Band. The Lost Gonzo Band was a great band. If they were here right now, they'd be worldwide. I mean, they really had it. They still have it. They're just older. You know, they're not in their 20s, they're in their 60s, 70s now. They're the same age as me, all those guys. In fact, Gary, I think, is a year or two older than me. Bob's about the same age. But anyway, they were all from West Texas, mostly. And that band, they just set the standard for a long time. Anyway, there were a lot of people who were already here, like Rusty Weir, Steve Frumholtz. Bobby Bridger did a lot of stuff. Anyway, mostly based around Castle Creek. Castle Creek was the listening club, the folk club. But when Willie bought the Opera House, all that was taken, Castle Creek essentially went away. And all those people, all that whole social network, all the bartenders, the waitresses, the roadies, all that whole crew moved over to the Opera House. And so you had a second mainline club now. You had the Armadillo and the Opera House. And they sort of competed against each other, but not really. It wasn't, vitriolic or anything.
How long was the Opera House? When did the Opera House?
Okay, well, first of all, the Opera House was originally the Oak Terrace Motor Hotel and Convention Center in the 50s. And it operated as that with flocked wallpaper and, just kind of what D. McCandless, who was the guy that built it, his idea of a luxury establishment would be. So anyway, and it worked as a motor hotel and convention center. It was probably Austin's first convention center. Right about the same, I don't know, Coliseum.
And Willie, so it's then turned to Texas.
So it turned into Texas. Okay, I hate to say it this way, but the guys that owned the Opera House, I hate to say it. As far as I always came to understand they were a bunch of coke dealers. Three guys did the old Texas Opera House. And they ran out of, like coke dealers do, the wheels flew off. And so
Willie wins it in the card game.
Willie had nothing to do with it. He played there some. In fact, I know
but he won it in a card game.
He won it in, that's what I was told.
From those guys?
From those guys. Somehow Willie won it in a card game.
Okay,
How it came
and then
down.
it turns into...
And he turns around and hires O'Connor. Mm-hmm. And Doug Moyes had already moved back to Colorado. Doug Moyes is a great guy. We could talk about Doug Moyes forever. Large forefather of everything that happened. Anyway, most people have never heard of him. He just died 2 years ago now. Great friend of mine. Anyway, so Willie wins it at a card game. He tells O'Connor he needs to, he's got a month to get it ready because it hadn't been running shows out of there. The Texas Opera House had gone down, and it probably sat vacant for at least 6 months there. And then Willie won it in a card game. So then he calls in all the buddies, to come. I've got a new club. So Tim took it on and hired like Roger One Night, who's still around. He's a drug counselor out of San Angelo, but Roger One Night ran the Continental Club for a long time, for several years there. And before that, I'm trying to remember the name of his bar. The one night. It was on 6th Street. So anyway, and there are witnesses still alive, is what I'm saying. And some of them have sobered up, and they can tell you a good story.
But how long did...
The Opera House was vacant mostly in early '77, I know, because we opened it up in June, and that was after working. So I'd say sometime in mid-'76, they kind of shuttered the doors, didn't run any more shows out of there.
But how long did it go into the 80s? Did it go into the 90s?
Yes. Okay, here, I'm trying to get there. So as, let's see, what was the name of Tim's production company? I know it. It's right on the tip of my head here. Shit, it'll come as soon as I'm not looking for it. Anyway, he had a fairly, well, he was able to book all the good acts because of his connection with Willie. And for 2 to 3 years, he booked him solid. Okay. Into, I'd say, the early 80s. Right about then, everybody's scrambling for more sources of income because, Willie's having trouble supporting all this. He's got his entire family, hanging on it. Anyway, and it turned out Neil Reshin, who was his manager, hadn't been paying taxes, and so the IRS came down on him.
Gotcha.
So around 81 or 2, I'm in my darkroom in the Opera House. It's all locked up. I'm in there. All of a sudden I hear doors slamming and people yelling and shit. I go, what's going on? Well, it turned out the IRS is there and they're chaining everything up. They're seizing the building. So
that's 1980?
I'd say 81 or 2.
Okay.
Maybe it could have been as late as 83, but it's right in there. Mm-hmm. And that night I moved my darkroom out of the building. So, it had been in there up to that moment. So
lucky you got your stuff out of there, I guess.
Well, I was, because that's all I could think of is they're gonna chain and padlock this place, and I'll never see my equipment again. Yeah. So I got it out that night, including the sink.
And so that's around 81, 82. Then
probably 83, 82, 83. But anyway.
Then what is the next club that people are?
Well, that's a good question. Well, now because the Armadillo
Club.
Because
I sat here with Don Nagel not too long ago, who was telling me all about the Austin Rehearsal Center, which was around 1990, I think. Or maybe that was 88, maybe.
Well, the Austin Rehearsal Center was just a portion of the Opera House.
But it was right in that whole...
It was right there. Well, my darkroom was right in the middle of all that. I'd already moved out of it, but it was. And then now you can still go... It's gone through several iterations, including one called Hire.com, which came in and did a bunch of... I took a bunch of my pictures that I took in the 70s and 80s, early 80s, and plastered them all over the wall there. So there have been several iterations where they've used my photos, and it'll happen again. Magdalena Hotel Magdalena. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's all my photographs that I mostly shot at the Opera House.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And the W Hotel, those were all my photos that I shot. Of course, now I don't even know if they're still up. But, I sold them to Bo a long time ago. Anyway, I've moved on. I've got other hotels and other stuff I'm doing. The Moody Center, you got the Moody, thing down, so many Moody's. But the Moody Center, up in the private boxes, that's my best gallery. Between each private box, they only allowed them to put my pictures in the actual boxes.
In the new Moody Center.
In the new Moody Center.
That's awesome.
Yes, those are only my pictures in the private boxes. Somebody else might have snuck one in here or there, but in between the doors of all the private boxes, there's a space, and I've got 55 by 39 inch photographs mounted. That's my best gallery. Is there.
Love that.
Yeah, it's a good one. And anyway, I've got a lot of galleries going around now, but hotel's fine, and it's perfect for a hotel.
Well, I love it. obviously music is such an important part of this town and the history of this town.
It's a town of the muses for sure.
And you have you've captured it.
Well, I saw it was going down, and I gave myself the assignment, and I just never stopped, never took myself off assignment.
I love your story about reading Homer and whatnot, and
Looking up and seeing
finding the muse in yourself and connecting with
That's
the muse.
absolutely a true story. That's how it unfolded, just like that.
With the musicians.
Musicians, yep. And they, musicians were my friends.
I've seen so much of your work over the years, and I've been such a big admirer of it. And we met, like I said, 15 years ago over at Moody, just because I'm interested in chatting with people that I don't know, and I saw
I'll talk to anybody.
Pictures. Well, that was an easy connection then.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting to hear what's inside of you and how you captured those pictures.
Well,
Because I feel like we're all connected.
Well, we are.
And
it's true.
And
that's my feeling as well.
And that's.
I feel like we're all spirits. Okay, we're all spirits that inhabit bodies. And now when you photograph a musician, you can't photograph his spirit. You can only photograph essentially his clothes. It's the body part. But you can infer what's inside that body. You can infer what motivates it. You can infer because you can see it. You can see the cock of the head. You can see the cock of the hip. You can see you can see all that. And as soon as you understand how to read it, it's just all laid out there. Everybody's walking billboards. And for me, it's just so easy to illustrate it. It's obvious. I have a very simple style. I try to isolate the subject and juxtapose with other elements, but essentially it's one subject, and that's not what's bouncing with the light bouncing, photons bouncing off his clothes. You're trying to get that person. You're trying to get that person, that spirit that inhabits that body. So you can only infer it. It's just like you can infer magnetism by looking at iron filings on a piece of paper and put a magnet underneath it. It arranges itself in the field. It's the same thing. It's the same thing without the obvious magnetism, but it's the same thing. All us humans, with our souls and our spirits, we order the stuff around us. And a good photographer can see that, and they can illustrate it and show it to you. They can take a picture of it and show it to you. They can show you the way all this stuff juxtaposes and relates. So that's what I am. I'm that guy. I see it, and I show it to other people. That's what I do. I learned I had that skill when I was 21.
Well, it's interesting because not everyone does.
No, they don't. Right? If they did, I wouldn't. There's some other people do. Some other people want to be.
Well, there's an interesting quote that I love, and I think you'll connect with this. There's someone who said that, it's not me, it's not my work. I'm just the hole in the flute that God blows through.
Well, that's pretty good. But the way the Greeks would say it, it's not me, it's my muse. Yeah. It's my muse. She tells me what to do, and I listen, and I try to do it the best I can. And that's the old quote from the Greeks. That's how they said it. It's not, no, but it was the same thing. It's not me, it's my muse.
Just listen. It's like hearing these artists talk about when a song came to them. Mm-hmm. I just heard this and I started writing, and the song was done.
There you go. Well, that's what Townes Van Zandt woke from a fever and wrote down "If I Needed You," and then woke up and said, "Where'd this come from?" And I guess his girlfriend said, "Well, you wrote that last night when you woke up." I did. Yeah, you did. I mean, yeah, it's a direct line. There's inspiration, and poetic inspiration is not that far away from being sick and having dementia and having deliriums and having, just that whole thing gets scrambled. So, the more you're around it and the more you see how it works, the more you understand when it comes down. So that's where I'm at this stage of my career.
All the other noise, right?
Well, yeah, I don't know. For me, I become the noise. I become that thing itself, the sound itself. For me, I express it through dancing. I mean, you've probably seen me just every once in a while I'll break into a little jig or whatever. That's just expressing the music as it runs through me. The music moves you if you let it, and I've learned how to let that happen. And it's my major epiphany and skill, and I'm appreciative. So
Well, I'm appreciative of you being here.
Then I just knocked over the water.
That's okay. You can, I'll get something for that. But thank you for coming here. And,
Sure.
And being with us.
I spilled the water right on
It's
cue.
okay. We're out.
All right.
Bye.